Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister for his remarks. It will go a long way to helping the families involved in the case of Vanessa George. And that's why I stand to speak today on behalf of the people, the families of the children who were abused by Vanessa George. Because those babies and toddlers, as they were when they were abused, are now still children, young adults, they can't be named, and nor can I place on record the names of the family members who have done so much campaigning, so much hard work, have shared so many painful experiences in order to get this far. They know who they are, and Plymouth is grateful to them, and I'm grateful to them for their work in this respect. Yeah. This campaign, our campaign, was started when the news of Vanessa George's release was made public. And it had a key objective at first was to prevent her early release, to prevent the release of someone who still held a power over the families and the victims of the names of the children that were abused. We don't believe that every child at Little Ted's nursery in Lara was abused by Vanessa George, but we don't know which child was. That means every single family that sent their most precious gift in the world, their child, to this nursery, is living with the uncertainty whether it is their child that was abused or not, whether it is their child whose image of that abuse is festering on some dark corner of the web somewhere. That is a cancer that eats away at you. And the courage and determination of the families throughout this has been a real source of strength for me. When it was announced that she was released, the campaign then moved to strengthen the law. And I want to pay tribute to the government. And as a member of the opposition front bench, that's not something I often find myself doing. But on this respect here, party politics has been put to one side. The Minister, his predecessor, who's now the Secretary of State, and their Justice team colleagues and the officials went out of their way to listen to the concerns of the family and to bring forward a piece of legislation that enacts the campaigns of 2 Labour MPs, I think is testament to how important these issues are, and actually the sense that actually, despite the contested nature of our politics in 2020, there are things that we can all agree on, and there are things that we can all work together on to make our country better. The campaign itself had 2 parts. One was the tightening of the law to make refusal to name children that have been abused a material consideration for the parole board in determining whether to release a prisoner or not. That was a legislative change that needed, and I'm grateful that remains in the bill. But the second part relates to the amendment that was passed in the Lords, and that was the softer side. That was the communications. That was how the victims' families felt involved with this process. And I'm happy to.
Thank you very much, the Honourable Member, for giving way. I wonder if the Honourable Member would agree with me that it is extremely important that the contact database or contact scheme that the parole board would have lists each individual family member, because so often in these instances the trauma of what has happened creates families to break up, and therefore it would be important then for each individual member to know exactly what was happening.
Thank the member for Loughborough for that intervention, and she is exactly right, and it's a point that I think was a really important part of the softer side of communication that needs to be built into this system. Because when the majority of the families found out about the release, it wasn't via communication from the authorities. It was via Facebook and it was via our local media. And that is an enormous, enormous tragedy for those families, unable to prepare themselves nor their children for what was coming. Those children that Vanessa George abused and those that we think she may have abused and their classmates are now young adults, secondary school age. They're digital natives. They were born with the internet. They know where they live. They know the issues in their community, and they have followed this, sometimes with greater awareness than sometimes their parents. And the ability to make sure that they can be supported in this process is something that local schools have done an enormous job with, but it's one that we need to build into a system to make sure there's proper communication. So I'm really pleased that the Minister has set out that the pilot schemes that have been set in place with the probation service will be rolled out nationally, including in Devon and Cornwall. That is a huge improvement on the current situation. I'm glad also that they're opt-out rather than opt-in. Opting in at the point of the crime taking place or the trial is an enormously difficult decision to make. It also is a decision that, as has just been alluded to, is normally made by only one member of a family, to take the lead with the liaison with the authorities. Because for most people, liaison with the police, The criminal justice system isn't something that they go through every single day, and it is a difficult decision. And so the ability to have an opt-in system where families can adjust their details over time when email addresses change and, as been alluded to, when families break up. The enormous stress of this case has led to families breaking up, and it is right and proper that both halves of a parent, the mum and the dad, have an opportunity to be informed about what is taking place. I'm really pleased that that is part of it. I'm also pleased that the Minister has set out the involvement of the Victims Commissioner. I've met the Victims Commissioner in relation to this case. I found her to be as compassionate and skilled in this as she was when she was in this House. And I know that her involvement in this will strengthen the system that flows from what we're coming forwards. I think the rollout of the Victim Contact Scheme is a really important moment, and I'm glad that the Minister has made that commitment. I would be very pleased to take him up on his offer to be involved with that and to feed in the experience of the families, because it's not just in relation to the communication, but it's the whole process that I've been sharing with ministers. In a previous meeting with one of his Justice colleagues, I spoke about the experience of one of the family members who gave evidence at the parole board hearing. Still a requirement to attend in person at that point in the prison where the offender is being held to read a statement out. And I could not understand why in the 21st century that wasn't able to be done by video link from their local court, sparing the pressure of travelling, in particular when we know it relates to a female offender, because we don't have as many female prisons as we do male prisons, and that means, especially from the southwest, travelling long distances in order to give evidence. And the coronavirus has itself speeded up the giving of video evidence, but I know that was a pilot that the government was looking at, and that has been piloted in London, that we're looking at rolling out nationwide to the parole system, and I hope that is something that can be reinforced as part of this. So on the basis of the reassurances that the Minister has provided today, and I'm grateful for him doing so, I want to echo the words of my own friend Verhove in saying that this is an amendment that we won't be pressing, and I think that is a good thing, because in my mind, child abuse should not be party political. It should be something where we find common ground and work on together. I'm grateful to Baroness Kennedy in the other place for tabling the amendment and to pressing it, because in doing so, she listened to the campaign of the victims in Plymouth, and she has helped achieve a movement on this, which I think is very, very welcome. Vanessa George robbed these children of their innocence. She robbed the families of the trust that they could place in their local nursery, which has now closed. And it is something that each of the families that I've spoken to has said, this can't change what happened, but it can stop it happening to someone else. And that is a really important part of where we're going. And I want to pay tribute to my old friend from St Helens North as well, for his championing of the first chapter of this bill in relation to Helen's Law. It is enormously difficult to make that case consistently for as long as he has done, but he has done so proudly, professionally, and with great courtesy. I know he will continue to support Mary and the family, and notwithstanding the personal pain that she feels at the release of Helen's killer, she is pleased to see that this law will come into force soon, and hopes that no other family will have to go through what she has. And I think that is a lasting tribute to her campaigning as part of this as well. I must admit, Madam Deputy Speaker, I was ill-prepared to deal with the scale of child abuse that this case gave me. And it is something that we need to equip those people in public life better for. Because when we are dealing with one case of child abuse, it is awful. When we are dealing, in this case here, with dozens of babies and toddlers that have been abused, the uncertainty around it, I have to say that is a scale of challenge that I was ill-prepared for. But I'm very glad that with the support of the Labour front bench and the support of the ministers and their officials, that we are getting to a point where those victims will be able to see a form of justice done in improving the system, better communication for what is taking place. But the final remark on this one, Madam Deputy Speaker, is to Vanessa George herself. She maintains a power over the victims by withholding the names. She will know the names of some of the children that she abused and photographed and shared the images of. Wherever she is in Britain at this point, she could help those families, relieve a part of their suffering and the uncertainty by naming some of the children that she abused. She must know the names. She must know that naming the kids would enormously help the healing process. And that is something that I appeal to her to do, because for as long as she holds those names, those families will not have peace. And I think that is a really important part. I'd like to thank the Minister for the concessions and the announcements that he's made today. This goes an enormous way to delivering the campaign on behalf of the families from Plymouth in relation to this. I think this is a good bill, and I think I hope that it will be able to be put into law by Christmas. And so all the families for the children that were abused in Plymouth will know that there is a strengthened law and better communication as a result of their campaigning. Thank you.